Multiple tropical systems across northern Australia, 3 separate areas of interest in the Coral Sea, Gulf of Carpentaria and the Indian Ocean, and one of them was tipped to become a powerful cyclone for Western Australia but is now falling apart. Let's get straight into what's happening and what it means for you. Right now, conditions across tropical Australia couldn't be more active. From the Coral Sea right across to the Indian Ocean, we've got 3 tropical lows being monitored by the Bureau of Meteorology. And the forecast for each of these systems has changed significantly in the last 48 hours. Before we get into the details, I want to address something straight up. If you're in Queensland and you've been hearing concerns about a cyclone heading your way, I'm going to explain exactly why that's not something to lose sleep over. The situation is a lot less threatening than some of the early chatter suggested. Let S start with the strongest system right now. Tropical Low 14U, located out in the Coral Sea. This system has been active for a couple of days and has recently developed some fresh convection. It's moving on a southeasterly track, heading well away from the Australian mainland. The system is expected to pass close to Norfolk Island, then continue down towards New Zealand, arriving around Thursday night into Friday morning. Over the next 24 hours, we are expecting this low to intensify from its current weak state to borderline tropical cyclone status. Here is the key point for Australian interests. This system poses no threat to the mainland, none whatsoever. It is heading away from Queensland and will weaken to an extratropical system before reaching New Zealand. Apart from some gusty winds around Lord Howe Island and potentially some rough seas in the Tasman, this one is not our concern. Now, the system that is getting attention. Tropical Low 17U, recently designated by the Bureau. This one is currently in the Gulf of Carpentaria and is expected to move into the Coral Sea through tonight and tomorrow. By Wednesday, conditions become more favourable for development. The low should begin intensifying as it moves into the Coral Sea, potentially reaching tropical cyclone status by the end of the week. Current modelling suggests Friday or Saturday. Here is where it gets interesting. And here is where I need you to pay attention to the forecast uncertainty rather than jumping to conclusions. This system is expected to form just offshore from the extreme north of Queensland. It'll then track generally southeastwards, moving down towards the southeast and positioning itself roughly halfway between the Queensland coast and New Caledonia, out near Frederick Reef. In the reliable part of the forecast, this system stays well offshore. It hugs the Great Barrier Reef but doesn't threaten the coastline. It remains a marine hazard, not a coastal threat. But then the forecast breaks down. And this is where we need to talk about model disagreement and uncertainty. Some longer-range modelling suggests this system could make an unusual turn back towards the west, potentially impacting the Queensland coast. And that sparked concern. Fair enough. Any talk of a cyclone turning towards the coast deserves attention. But here is what you need to understand about that scenario. We're talking about a forecast that is 7 to 10 days out. We're talking about a system that hasn't even properly formed yet. The centre of low pressure doesn't exist. We're dealing with a broad monsoonal trough that might develop into something. Compare that to Tropical Cyclone Koji. That system had a really slow start because it began as a monsoonal low. Took a full week to properly organise and intensify. This system here is expected to be smaller and a bit less complex, which means it should develop faster, maybe 3 or 4 days instead of a full week. But the forecast remains uncertain because we are not dealing with a defined system yet. We're rewatching a developing monsoon trough. Current modelling shows 2 main scenarios. In the first scenario, the system tracks southeast, stays offshore, and heads out towards New Caledonia early next week. No threat to Queensland. In the second scenario, and this is the lower confidence option, the system stalls or loops back, potentially approaching the coast later in the forecast period. Now, why the disagreement between models? Several factors. Sea surface temperatures in the Coral Sea are favourable for development. We've got warm water, we've got low wind shear in that region. Those are the ingredients a tropical cyclone needs. But we've also got steering currents that are difficult to predict this far out. We've got interactions with the monsoon trough. We've got potential influence from other weather systems to the south. When models disagree like this, it doesn't mean one scenario is right and the other is wrong. It means there are multiple possibilities and the atmosphere hasn't decided which way it's going yet. So what does this mean for Queensland? In the short term, not much. As this system develops over the next few days, you are going to see typical monsoon activity. Widespread showers and thunderstorms across the far north, nothing out of the ordinary for this time of year. You might see gusty winds developing across the northern Cape York Peninsula and the Torres Strait. We've already got ship observations showing 34 knots in some areas. Willis Island recording gusts to 30 knots. Horn Island, just outside Thursday Island, seeing similar conditions. Over the next 72 hours, winds could briefly reach tropical cyclone equivalent strength in exposed areas north of Waipa and across the Torres Strait. Don't be surprised if the Bureau issues severe weather warnings for gusty winds and rough seas, but in terms of rainfall, we're re-looking at scattered showers and thunderstorms, typical summer monsoon activity. Some areas might cop 50 to 100 millimetres, but it's going to be patchy, not the widespread heavy falls you'd see with a mature tropical cyclone. For the rest of Queensland, from Cairns right down through to the southeast, this system remains offshore in all the reliable modelling. You will see some rough seas, particularly later in the week. Mariners need to pay attention to marine warnings, but coastal impacts look minimal. Now, I want to address the anxiety around that potential loop-back scenario. Should you be concerned? At this stage, no. Should you be prepared? Always. But that standard practice for far north Queensland during cyclone season, here is my assessment. The chances of this system making a significant turn back towards Queensland are low. Not zero, but low. The steering patterns would need to set up in a very specific way. Multiple factors would need to align. Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? Based on current modelling, no. What I am watching is whether this system properly develops into a cyclone at all, and if it does, whether it maintains that southeasterly track. That is the most probable outcome. For those of you with long memories, you might be thinking about Tropical Cyclone Alfred or other systems that took unusual tracks. Fair enough, we've seen cyclones do unexpected things. That's why we monitor these systems closely and update forecasts as new information comes in. But right now, with the information we have, this is not something to panic about. Don't rush out to stock up on supplies beyond your normal cyclone season preparedness. Don't change your plans. Just stay informed. If this situation changes, if the models start converging on a coastal threat, you'll know about it well in advance. That's the benefit of modern forecasting. We've got days of lead time, not hours. Right, let's talk about the third system, Tropical Low 16U over in the Timor Sea. This is the system that was making headlines, potentially a powerful cyclone for Western Australia. The remnants of former tropical cyclone Koji after its marathon journey. Koji made landfall as a Category 2 cyclone near Bowen, tracked northwest through Queensland and the Northern Territory, re-emerged over the Joseph Bonaparte Gulf and then moved into the Indian Ocean. Forecasters, myself included, were watching this system carefully. Conditions looked favourable for significant intensification. We expected it to be well on the way to cyclone status by now, possibly already named. That hasn't happened. And here is why. Wind shear, specifically very high levels of wind shear coming from the northeast. This has absolutely battered the system, ripped it apart, essentially. Let me explain what is happening. The centre of low pressure at the surface level is located north of Kalamburu, up near Truscott, but all the thunderstorm activity, all the convection is displaced well to the southwest of that centre. That is because the wind shear is tilting the system. The low pressure centre in the lower levels of the atmosphere is in one spot, but the centre in the mid-levels is somewhere else entirely. That creates a disorganised, messy system. For a tropical cyclone to intensify, it needs all those thunderstorms concentrated around the centre. It needs that tight, organised structure. When wind shear displaces the convection, the system can strengthen. In fact, it weakens. This is the same phenomenon that helps create organised severe thunderstorms in temperate regions. The wind shear gets them spinning, creates those tilted updrafts. But for tropical cyclones, which need calm, uniform conditions, wind shear is deadly. Typically, during our cyclone season, we have very low wind shear across tropical Australia. That SY conditions are favourable for cyclone development. But in this case, we had unexpectedly high shear coming through. The forecast models didn't predict this wind shear accurately. It wasn't in the modelling 48 to 72 hours ago. So this isn't a case of getting the forecast wrong. This is a case of an unexpected atmospheric development that none of the models picked up. What does this mean for Western Australia? Good news. This system is no longer a significant threat. At best, over the next 4 or 5 days, probably around this weekend, Saturday or Sunday, this system might reorganise enough to come ashore near Derby as a Category 1, maybe Category 2 cyclone. similar to what Tropical Cyclone Haley did recently. At worst, and potentially more likely, this system continues to struggle, drifts towards the Kimberley or Northern Territory coast as a weak tropical low, bringing some heavy showers and thunderstorm activity, but nothing severe. Either way, it's not going to become the powerful cyclone we were concerned about earlier in the week. For those along the Kimberley coast and the Pilbara, you can relax. The threat has diminished significantly. Wind shear has done the job for you. That said, Don T completely right off the Indian Ocean just yet. Looking at the longer range modelling out towards the end of January, there are some signs of potential development. We might see another area of low pressure form somewhere in the eastern Indian Ocean. Could be something coming off the Northern Territory coast, could be a system tracking down from near the Cocos-Keeling Islands or Christmas Island. There's a small uptick in tropical cyclone potential around the Kimberley region and parts of the Pilbara coast in that time frame. But we're re-talking about week 3, week 4 of the forecast. That S-low confidence territory. At this point, there's nothing definite I can comment on for Western Australia until we get out to about early February. Just something to keep an eye on as we move through the month. Now, what about the Northern Territory? If tropical low 16U does drift towards the Northern Territory coast instead of the Kimberley, what can you expect? Potentially some decent rainfall. Because if this system approaches as a monsoon low rather than an organised cyclone, it'll bring widespread showers and thunderstorm activity. Less wind, more rain. For the top end, which has been relatively dry compared to normal, that wouldn't be the worst outcome. Some areas could use the moisture. I am more confident in a Northern Territory scenario than a Western Australia scenario at this point, purely because a monsoonal approach fits better with the current wind shear environment. Right, let's talk about what all this means practically. If you're in far north Queensland, Torres Strait or Northern Cape York, expect typical monsoon conditions for the next few days. Gusty winds, scattered showers, thunderstorms. Secure any loose items around the property. Keep an eye on marine warnings if you are heading out on the water. Don T, panic about the Coral Sea system. Stay informed, yes. Monitor Bureau of Meteorology updates, absolutely. But Don T, lose sleep over it. If you are anywhere else in Queensland, from Cairns down through to Brisbane and the Gold Coast, this system is not your concern right now. The reliable part of the forecast keeps it well offshore. Continue with your normal plans. For those in the Northern Territory, particularly around Darwin and the top end, you might see some welcome rain by next weekend if tropical low 16U drifts your way. That S, still uncertain, but it is possible. Western Australia, Kimberley and Pilbara regions, you've dodged a bullet with 16U. The system that looked threatening earlier this week has lost most of its punch. Still monitor updates, but the immediate threat has passed. And for everyone in tropical Australia, remember we're in the heart of cyclone season. This is normal. We monitor multiple systems. Most of them Don T amount to much, and the ones that do develop give us plenty of warning. The key is staying informed without getting anxious. Check the Bureau of Meteorology website daily, listen to your local warnings, have your cyclone plan ready, because that S just good practice from November through April. But Don T, let every tropical low send you into panic mode. Most of them fizzle out or stay offshore. The Bureau does an excellent job with cyclone forecasting. You will have days of warning if something genuine develops. A few technical points for those interested in the meteorology. Sea surface temperatures across the Coral Sea are sitting around 28 to 29 degrees Celsius. That is warm enough for cyclone development. We need at least 26.5 degrees, so we were well above that threshold. Wind shear across most of the Coral Sea is low to moderate. That is favourable. But across the Timor Sea and Eastern Indian Ocean, we've seen that unusually high shear from the northeast. And that S, what killed 16U, the monsoon trough is active and strengthening. That S, typical for mid to late January. We often see increased tropical activity during this period. The build-up is well underway across the north. Looking at the broader pattern, we've had a relatively quiet cyclone season so far. We into mid-January and we haven't seen any significant landfalls yet. That doesn't mean we 1T cyclone season runs through until April, and February and March are typically our most active months. Some of you might remember back to other active seasons. Cyclone Yasi in 2011, Category 5 system that crossed near Mission Beach, or Larry in 2006 near Innisfail. Those were late January and March respectively. Point being, we're not out of the woods yet. Stay prepared. But also, Don T, assume every low pressure system is going to turn into the next major cyclone. For those of you with livestock and properties in northern areas, normal precautions apply. Make sure stock have access to high ground if we do see heavy rain. Check your water supplies, ensure machinery and equipment is secured. If you're replanning travel through the north over the next week or two, stay flexible. Flights and ferry services can be disrupted by monsoon activity even without a cyclone. Have a backup plan. And for mariners, whether you are commercial operators or recreational fishermen, pay close attention to marine warnings. These systems, even when they don't become cyclones, can generate rough seas, high winds, and dangerous conditions offshore. One last point on forecast uncertainty. I know some of you get frustrated when forecasts change. Why was 16U supposed to be powerful and now it is not? Why do the models disagree on 17U? Weather forecasting, particularly tropical forecasting, is not an exact science. We're dealing with a chaotic system. Small changes in atmospheric conditions can lead to big changes in outcomes. The models we use, the Access model from the Bureau, the GFS, the European model, they all incredibly sophisticated. But they approximations of reality. They crunch millions of data points and give us their best estimate of what'll happen. When they disagree, it tells us there's genuine uncertainty. Multiple outcomes are possible. That is not a failure of forecasting. That is an honest representation of the atmosphere's complexity. What we can tell you with high confidence is the next 24 to 48 hours. Beyond that, confidence drops. And once you get out past 5 days, we're giving you scenarios and possibilities, not certainties. That's why we update forecasts multiple times a day during active situations. As new data comes in, as systems actually develop, as atmospheric patterns clarify, we refine the forecast. So if you hear different things from different sources, or if the forecast changes from one day to the next, that's not a problem. That's modern meteorology working as it should. Stay with reliable sources. The Bureau of Meteorology is your go-to for official warnings and forecasts. They've got the most comprehensive data, the best models, and the responsibility for public safety. Right, let's wrap this up. 3 tropical lows across northern Australia. 14U in the Coral Sea heading away from us towards New Zealand. No threat to the mainland. 17U developing in the Gulf of Carpentaria, expected to move into the Coral Sea and potentially become a cyclone later this week. Current forecast keeps it offshore from Queensland. Some modelling suggests a possible turn back towards the coast, but confidence in that scenario is low. Not something to worry about right now. 16U in the Timor Sea, the system that looked threatening for Western Australia, has been torn apart by wind shear. At best, a weak to moderate cyclone for the Kimberley later this week. At worst, or maybe at best, depending on your perspective, a monsoon low bringing rain to the Northern Territory. Either way, not the significant system we thought it might be. For most of you watching this, these systems are not going to impact you directly. But they worth monitoring because situations can change. Check the Bureau of Meteorology website daily. Make sure your cyclone kit is up to date. Know your plan. But don't panic. We're in cyclone season. This is normal. And so far, despite 3 systems on the map, none of them are posing a significant immediate threat to populated areas of Australia. That could change, and if it does, you'll have plenty of warning. But right now, based on current information and current modelling, there's no reason for concern. Stay informed, stay prepared, stay calm. That's the approach that works best during cyclone season. And remember, if conditions do deteriorate, if any of these systems become a genuine threat, the Bureau will issue clear warnings with specific advice. Follow that advice. It is based on the best science and the best information available. Right, that's it from me. I'll continue monitoring these systems and provide updates as things develop. If there is any significant change in the forecast, you will hear about it. Stay safe, keep an eye on the official warnings, and don't let the tropical activity ruin your week. For most of you, it is business as usual with just a bit of extra